You won't believe what happened to me. Just the other day, something so wild, I still can't wrap my head around it. I was enjoying a quiet evening in my own backyard, relaxing in my jacuzzi after a long day, when suddenly, this guy's son shows up with his girlfriend. Without even a hint of politeness, he demanded I get out so they could use it. Just like that. No explanation, no respect. What made it worse was the attitude full of entitlement, and honestly, some things he said left me stunned. It wasn't just rude. It felt like there was something deeper going on beneath the surface. I couldn't believe someone could just walk into my space and act like they owned it. Now, here's where things get even crazier. I'm not just some regular guy. I'm the chief of police in this town. So when this confrontation started, I had every right to stand my ground, but I wanted to handle it calmly. Still, his words and actions raised a red flag that something wasn't right, and it felt like this was about more than just the jacuzzi. This encounter turned into a bigger issue than I expected, one that could affect the whole neighborhood. As the tension grew, I found myself questioning what really was behind his demand. Was it just about the jacuzzi, or was there some other problem brewing? And with his girlfriend there, things felt even more complicated. I knew this wasn't going to end quietly, and I was already preparing for what might come next. But what happened after this shocking moment? How did I respond to this disrespect? And what secrets might this encounter reveal about the people involved? Stay tuned, because this story is far from over. You're going to want to hear what happened next. After that tense moment in my backyard, I couldn't just shake it off. The way Karen's son acted wasn't like anything I'd seen before, especially from someone so young. Growing up in this neighborhood, I've dealt with all kinds of people, but this felt different. It wasn't just about entitlement or disrespect. There was a sharp edge to his tone, like he thought he had some kind of power over me. It made me wonder what kind of home he was raised in and what had twisted his sense of right and wrong. His girlfriend didn't say much, but her expression told its own story in ease, maybe even scared of what might happen next. It struck me as odd, given how confident he was. I started piecing things together, trying to understand why he'd come to my place and act that way. Was it a simple clash over the jacuzzi, or was there more to this? I'd heard rumors about tension between their family and mine, but I never thought it would spill over like this. As chief of police, I've seen how small conflicts can quickly spiral out of control. That's why I stayed calm, even though inside I was boiling. I needed to know more about what was driving this hostility. Was it personal? Was it something they were hiding? Or was this just the beginning of a much bigger problem in our community? Reached out to a few neighbors afterward, quietly asking if anyone else had experienced anything similar. Surprisingly, some stories came up, little things that didn't seem connected at first, but painted a picture of ongoing tension. This wasn't an isolated incident, and the more I dug, the more I realized things were far from simple. What I didn't expect was how this confrontation would soon pull me deeper into a web of secrets, challenges, and unexpected alliances. But for now, the question remained: how far was Karen's son willing to go, and what would happen the next time we crossed paths? The answer was still out there, waiting to be uncovered. The more I thought about that encounter, the clearer it became that this wasn't just a random act of rudeness. Karen's son seemed to carry with him a whole history of tension, some of it obvious, some buried under the surface. I started hearing whispers from neighbors about past incidents, moments when he and his family clashed with others in the community. People said there had been arguments over parking spots, loud parties late at night, and even some questionable remarks that made others uncomfortable. But no one had expected it to come to this: someone demanding I leave my own property like I was the intruder at the same time. I couldn't ignore my role as chief of police. There was a delicate balance between being firm and fair, and I knew this situation was going to test that. On one hand, I had a duty to keep peace and order, but on the other, I had to protect my own rights and safety. It wasn't easy to separate personal feelings from professional responsibility when the line was so blurred. I had to remind myself to stay objective, but inside, the tension was growing heavier. Meanwhile, the subplot with his girlfriend gnawed at me. She seemed caught in the middle of this storm, maybe feeling trapped by her boyfriend's attitude, but unsure how to step away. I wondered what her side of the story was, if she felt the same pressure, or if she was part of the problem. It made me realize that every conflict like this has layers, more than just what you see on the surface, and then there was the bigger picture. This incident wasn't happening in isolation. There were undercurrents in the neighborhood, a growing sense of division and frustration among residents. I knew that if something didn't change, this small confrontation could ignite something much larger. But what was the spark, and who would be caught in the flames? For now, the questions were piling up, and the answers weren't coming easily. The next move wasn't clear, and the uneasy feeling in my gut told me this was just the beginning of a much deeper conflict. As days passed, the tension in the neighborhood grew thicker, almost like you could feel it in the air. Every time I stepped outside, I caught sideways glances from neighbors, whispers behind closed doors, and the faintest signs that things were about to boil over. Karen's son wasn't just ignoring boundaries anymore. He was testing limits, pushing further each time we crossed paths. It wasn't just about the jacuzzi anymore. It felt like a power play, a challenge aimed right at me. I kept reminding myself to stay calm. But inside, the frustration built up. The more I tried to keep things professional and avoid escalating, the more it felt like I was walking a tightrope. His presence seemed to stir something dark, like a powder keg ready to explode. Every word he said carried a weight that went beyond mere disrespect. There was an edge of something dangerous lurking beneath, and his girlfriend. She still hovered nearby, caught somewhere between fear and loyalty, never quite stepping up, but never backing down either. One evening, as I was heading out after work, I saw them again, this time with a small group of friends. Their eyes locked on me, and I could feel the silent challenge in their stares. I knew this wasn't going to end with just words. The neighborhood's usual quiet had been replaced by a tense silence, as if everyone was holding their breath. Waiting for the inevitable clash, I reached for my phone, wondering if this was the moment I'd have to take action beyond just talking. But the question wasn't if, it was when. And what that moment would mean for me, for them, and for the whole community was still unknown. One thing was clear. Whatever happened next, it wasn't going to be easy. The stakes were higher than ever, and I was right in the middle of it. All just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated. Something happened that threw everything into a new and unexpected direction. One afternoon, while reviewing some reports at the station, I got a call from a neighbor, someone I trusted, who said they had overheard a conversation that changed the whole picture. It wasn't just about entitlement or bad attitudes anymore. Apparently, Karen's son had been involved in something more serious. Something that could put not just me, but the whole neighborhood at risk. At first, I didn't want to believe it. But the more I looked into it, the clearer it became that this wasn't just a petty dispute over a jacuzzi or a backyard boundary. There were rumors of shady dealings, threats, and even some kind of plan brewing beneath the surface that no one had expected. Suddenly, the disrespect I faced wasn't just personal, it was part of something bigger and more dangerous. It made me question everything I thought I knew about this family and their intentions. The tension I had been feeling was nothing compared to the storm that was coming. Now, with this new information, the stakes were raised higher than ever. The neighborhood that once felt like home was starting to feel like a battleground. And being the chief of police, I was caught right in the middle, balancing my duty to protect with the shock of what I was uncovering, with Karen's son still acting bold and reckless. and his girlfriend's silence growing heavier, I knew the situation was spiraling fast. Every step I took now could either calm the fire or fuel it. What no one expected was just how deep this conflict would go, how close it would come to changing everything I cared about. The question was no longer just about a jacuzzi or respect. It was about safety, trust, and what it really means to stand your ground. The night everything came to a head was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I had just finished a late shift when I saw Karen's son and his girlfriend standing near the edge of my property. Their faces shadowed, but their stance still full of defiance. I knew this was the moment we couldn't avoid anymore. I stepped outside, calm but ready, and told them to leave peacefully. Instead of backing down, he took a step closer, voice raised, demanding the jacuzzi once again. It wasn't just about the hot tub. It was clear he wanted to provoke me, to push me into reacting. But I wasn't about to let anger take control. I reminded him firmly who I was and what my responsibilities were, not just as a homeowner, but as the chief of police. That's when things shifted. The girlfriend finally spoke up, her voice shaky but honest. She admitted that her boyfriend had been caught up in some bad choices, pressures from the wrong crowd, and that he was scared of what might happen if he didn't keep up this act of control. It wasn't about the jacuzzi or mitt, it was about fear and trying to protect a broken pride. Suddenly, the tension broke, not with more shouting or threats, but with something I hadn't expected. A quiet apology. Karen's son looked away, the bravado slipping for a moment. I saw a chance to turn things around, to de-escalate what could have been disaster. I offered help, not punishment, letting them know I wasn't just a chief of police, was a neighbor who wanted peace. Just as the night seemed to calm, a car pulled up suddenly, lights flashing. It was someone from their past, someone who'd been causing much of the trouble behind the scenes. The story wasn't over. The real battle was just beginning. It was bigger than any of us realized. As the flashing lights lit up the quiet street, everything shifted once again. The car that pulled up was tied to a figure from Karen's son's past, a person who had been stirring trouble behind the scenes, fueling much of the tension we'd all been feeling. But instead of chaos, something unexpected happened. This arrival forced everyone to face the real source of the problems that had been building for months. With the situation now out in the open, I took the chance to bring calm and clarity. I worked with the family, the neighbors, and even the person who had been causing unrest to find a way forward. It wasn't easy. There were hard conversations, apologies, and moments of truth that no one wanted to face at first. But step by step, the walls between us started to come down. Karen's son, once so quick to anger and control, began to understand that respect and community mattered more than pride or power. His girlfriend, too, found her voice and helped bridge the gap. What had started as a simple argument over a jacuzzi turned into a turning point for the whole neighborhood. It reminded everyone that behind conflict, there's often fear and misunderstanding, and that sometimes it takes patience and a willingness to listen to turn tension into trust. By the end, I wasn't just the chief of police or a homeowner. I was part of a community healing from its fractures. The jacuzzi was still mine, but what mattered most was the respect we rebuilt together. This story showed me, and hopefully you, that standing your ground doesn't mean fighting alone. It means knowing when to hold firm and when to open the door for peace. Sometimes the biggest battles lead to the strongest connections. And that's what truly makes a neighborhood feel like home.